A text message came through at 4:10 a.m. local time in the Persian Gulf, right after a 16-hour shift on the rig. I'm leaving you and moving to San Diego with my 23-year-old babe. I'm taking all our money with me. My name is Joseph. I'm 54 and have spent the last 87 years working on oil platforms around the world. My hands were still greasy when I opened the message from Patricia, my wife of 19 years. I stared at my phone as another message appeared, a screenshot of our joint account balance showing $0, where $158,000 should have been. She'd even included a little kiss emoji, as if this were a sweet gesture. I didn't throw my phone or punch a wall. I just sat on my bunk in the cramped quarters I shared with two other riggers and typed, "Sure, good luck." Then I turned my phone off and went to shower. The next day, the guys noticed something was off when I skipped breakfast and went straight to work. My second-in-command, Jackson, kept glancing over during safety checks, but he knew better than to ask. We had 18 workers depending on us to keep this floating metal city safe. Personal problems stayed personal. During my lunch break, I checked my email. Patricia had already filed for divorce, claiming I'd abandoned the marriage by working overseas too much. She'd hired a lawyer named Bradley, who specialized in high-asset divorces. They were requesting spousal support based on my excessive income. She even had the audacity to add that her emotional support partner was now living in our house in Odessa. I closed my laptop and returned to work, not mentioning it to anyone. That night, I sent a single email, not to Patricia, but to my cousin Brendan, an accountant in Houston. "Time to activate protocol, winter," I wrote. That was our code phrase from years back. 3 minutes later, his response came, "Already on it. Don't respond to anything until you're stateside." I had 2 more weeks on this rotation, 2 more weeks of 12-hour shifts in 110-degree heat. While the life I thought I had dissolved back home, the guys would have understood if I'd asked for emergency leave. But what would that accomplish? It was better to finish the job and get the paycheck. That night, the rig supervisor, Vincent, stopped by my quarters. "Everything stable?" he asked. He wasn't just asking about the drilling operation. "Everything's under control," I replied. And it was more than Patricia would ever know. A history of cracks. I met Patricia 19 years ago at my buddy's fishing supply store in Odessa. She was 31 then, working the register and full of jokes about city folks who thought catching bass was complicated. I was 33, already 10 years into oil work, home between contracts and helping my friends stock inventory. We got married 11 months later. It was fast, but it made sense at the time. I'd already built a good life. I owned my house outright from a lucky investment, and I had a steady career path on the international rigs. She said she admired my stability and my focus. I admired her spirit and the way she could talk to anyone. The rotation schedule was always the challenge, 2 months on, 1 month off in those days, but the money was exceptional. I could earn in 6 months what most people in our town made in 3 years. We agreed it was worth it. She'd hold down the home front and I'd build our future. Around year 14, the first cracks appeared. Small things, complaints about missed birthdays, questions about whether I really needed to take the Saudi contract, comments about how her friends' husbands were always around for dinner parties. Looking back, I should have seen it. The year I turned 45, she stopped asking when I'd be home. She stopped sending photos of what she was doing. Our video calls got shorter, but I dismissed it as the natural evolution of a long-distance marriage. Last Christmas, I came home to find she'd redecorated our entire house without mentioning it. New furniture, new paint, new everything. When I asked about it, she just said, I needed a change. I didn't ask what kind of change she meant. 2 months ago, I noticed transfers from our joint account to one I didn't recognize. House repairs, she explained. The foundation needed work. I drove by the house before leaving for this rotation. No sign of construction, but there was a black Audi I'd never seen parked in our driveway. 4 weeks ago, she stopped answering my calls altogether, just texting that she was busy with a new project. I almost flew home early then, but I convinced myself to trust my wife of 18 years. 3 days ago, our neighbor Harold sent me a photo of a moving truck in front of our house. Thought you should know was all he wrote. I didn't reply. Sometimes the best thing a man can do is nothing at all. Sometimes the truth reveals itself. The betrayal unveiled. I finished my shift the day after Patricia's text and went back to my quarters. The satellite phone rang. It was Brendan. "You sitting down?" he asked. "Just tell me." He didn't sugarcoat it. She's been planning this for at least 14 months. Regular transfers to a separate account under her maiden name. Started small, $2,500 here, $3,500 there, then bigger amounts over the last 90 days. Total of $218,000 moved. Not just the $140,000 from your joint account. The room seemed to tilt sideways for a moment. "There's something else," Brendan continued. "She changed the beneficiary on your life insurance policy 6 months ago, and she took out a $40,000 home equity line of credit against the house for your signature on that one." I sat on the edge of my bunk, suddenly aware of the deep hum of the rig's generators. 18 years together, nearly 2 decades of life shared. And she'd been methodically erasing me from it, piece by piece, for over a year. "The guy?" I finally asked. "Devon Forrester, 24, like she said. Former personal trainer. No significant employment history in the last 3 years. 3 previous relationships with women over 46. Each ended within 19 months. I didn't need the pattern spelled out." And Joseph Brendan's voice dropped lower. "There are credit card charges for 2 one-way tickets to San Diego, dated for next Tuesday. That was 3 days from now." She wasn't just leaving me. She was trying to vanish with everything before I even made it home. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my quarters for a long time. The hurt crystallized into something harder, colder. I walked to my locker and pulled out my laptop. I accessed the email account only Brendan and I knew about and logged into the holding company we'd established 8 years ago. I'd watched a colleague lose everything in a divorce. Wind Holdings, named after my grandmother's maiden name and the creek running through our property. The account balance loaded, $1.6 million. I'd been diverting 70% of my income there for 8 years, legally declared on taxes but separated from our marital assets through the corporate structure Brendan had designed. I sent a single email to my lawyer in Houston. "Proceed with Operation Cold Return." Then I closed my laptop and went to the mess hall for coffee. For the first time in days, I felt hungry. The Trappist SETI landed in Houston 38 hours after my rotation ended. Brendan met me at the airport, handing me a burner phone and a folder of documents. "She's been calling your regular number non-stop," he said. "The bank froze the account she transferred the money to. Standard procedure for large, unusual movements. They're requesting you come in person to verify." "She doesn't know I'm back," I said. "No one does, except me and Thomas." Thomas was my lawyer. But that's not the most interesting development. He pulled out his tablet and showed me a series of text messages between Patricia and someone saved as D. I skimmed through them. Plans for their new life. Jokes about me working overseas while they spent my money. Then, one exchange from 2 days ago caught my attention. "Patricia Bank froze the money. Need Joseph to verify in person. What do we do?" "D, he's still on the rig for 10 more days. Tell him there's an emergency with your mum. Get him to authorize you to handle it. You're still his wife, Patricia. He's not answering my calls. D, try harder. We need that money before the house closing next week, or we need to look at Plan B, Patricia. I'm not comfortable with Plan B, D. It's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job for a reason. People have accidents all the time." I handed the tablet back to Brendan. My hands were steady but cold. "These are admissible?" I asked. "They're from the cloud backup of her phone. She used your Apple account credentials to set up her new phone last year. Everything syncs to your cloud storage." We drove straight to Thomas's office. He'd already prepared divorce papers, a criminal complaint for the forgery on the home equity loan, and an emergency motion to freeze all assets. There's a complication, Thomas said. She's filed a domestic violence claim against you, says she left because of ongoing emotional abuse and financial control. Claims she was in fear for her safety. That's absurd, I said. I've been 6,000 miles away. Doesn't matter, Thomas replied. It's a tactic to gain sympathy with the judge and justify taking the money. Her lawyer's pushing for an emergency hearing tomorrow to get a restraining order and exclusive use of the house. So she wants to ban me from my own property while her boyfriend lives there. And there's more, Thomas said. The home equity loan, she already spent it, transferred it to an LLC, registered to Devon Forrester. I took a deep breath. Options. We counterfile immediately, Thomas said. Fraud, forgery, alienation of affection, criminal conspiracy based on those text messages. We request an emergency freeze on all her accounts and the LLC. He slid a document across the desk. And we file this. I looked down. Motion to dismiss domestic violence claim with evidence of perjury. What evidence? I asked. Thomas smiled thinly. Your location data from your company's security badge shows you've been on that oil platform for 7 continuous weeks. Your passport stamps confirm it. And I subpoenaed your phone records, showing all calls between you two for the past year. Nothing suggesting arguments or threats. I signed where indicated. One more thing, Thomas said. We need you to appear surprised when she's served. She can't know you're back yet. For now, you're still officially at sea. I can do that, I nodded. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia to my regular number. Please. Comey, it's an emergency. I need you. I didn't respond. The trap was set, but not by her. The witness I stayed at Brendan's place that night, sleeping better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I logged into the security camera feed for our house in Odessa. Patricia had either forgotten about it or assumed I couldn't access it from overseas. The footage showed a young man lounging by our pool, drinking from my whiskey collection and wearing what looked like my old college sweatshirt. While I watched, Patricia came into the frame. She looked anxious, pacing as she talked. I couldn't hear the audio, but her body language was clear. Things weren't going according to plan. Brendan came in with coffee. You should see this, he said, opening his laptop. He'd spent the night digging into Devon Forrester's background. He's done this before, 3 times. Same pattern. Meets a woman, usually married and financially stable. She leaves her husband, taking whatever money she can. They move away together. Within 18 months, he disappears with whatever's left. The screen showed news articles, court records, social media posts. 3 women across 5 years, all left financially ruined. There's more, Brendan said quietly. He was a person of interest in the death of his second girlfriend's ex-husband. Suspicious car accident 6 weeks after the divorce filing. No charges were ever filed, but the implications hung in the air. My phone rang. Patricia, again. I let it go to voicemail. You should hear this, Brendan said, playing the message on speaker. Joseph, please. I need you to call the bank. Her voice cracked. There's been a misunderstanding. I was just moving money to a safer investment, like we talked about. But the bank froze everything. I can't access any funds. Please call them and tell them it's okay. I'm really scared. We talked about no such thing. The performance was convincing. She's desperate, Thomas said when we met for lunch. The house closing in San Diego is in 5 days. They need that money. What's our next move? I asked. The emergency hearing is this afternoon. Judge Winters is presiding. She has zero tolerance for false domestic violence claims. We have your documented alibi ready. We've filed to have the bank funds returned to you exclusively. Thomas slid a folder across the table. Your neighbor Harold sent these to my office this morning. Inside were photos of furniture being loaded into a moving truck. My furniture, family heirlooms. They're clearing out the house, Thomas confirmed, planning to disappear whether they get the bank money or not. I closed the folder and handed it back. Change of plans. I want to go home. That's not advisable, Thomas began. Not to confront them, I clarified. To watch from Harold's place, I want to see this with my own eyes. And I want to be there when they're served, not hiding behind legal papers. I want Patricia to see my face when her world collapses. Thomas nodded slowly. I'll arrange it. As we left the restaurant, a text came through on my burner phone from Harold. They're packing your grandfather's desk now. The one you restored. Thought you'd want to know. Some thefts go beyond money. Some betrayals cut deeper than others. This had just become personal in an entirely new way. The final showdown, the 6-hour drive to Odessa, gave me time to think. Thomas arranged for the sheriff to serve papers at 9 a.m. the next morning. Brendan set up surveillance from Harold's house across the street. Harold greeted me with a silent handshake when I arrived just after midnight. He was a retired petroleum engineer who'd worked rigs himself. She has no idea you're watching, I asked. None. They've been busy packing all day, loading the good stuff, leaving the rest. 2 moving trucks came and went. Big ones coming tomorrow morning for the last load. At 3 a.m., unable to sleep, I sat at Harold's kitchen table reviewing the documentation Brendan had prepared. Bank records, phone records, credit card statements. A cold clarity came from seeing the evidence laid out. Not a momentary betrayal, but a calculated extraction. A deliberate dismantling of everything we'd built. By sunrise, Thomas had texted confirmation. Patricia had listed our house 2 days earlier. The asking price was 30% below market value. For a quick sale, she'd forged my signature on the listing agreement. At 8:30 a.m., I watched from Harold's kitchen window as Patricia and Devon loaded the last items into his black Audi. My grandmother's silver picture frames. The antique watch my father had given me. At 8:55 a.m., a large moving truck pulled up. 3 men got out and approached the house, right on schedule. At 8:55 a.m., an unmarked car parked directly behind the moving truck, blocking it in. 2 sheriff's deputies and a woman in a business suit emerged. Thomas had sent a court officer along with them. It's time, I said to Harold. I walked across the street as the deputies approached my front door. Patricia answered, her expression shifting from irritation to confusion as they identified themselves. Mrs. Harrington, we have paperwork to serve you and the gentleman on the premises. I stayed just out of sight, watching from the edge of the driveway as the color drained from her face. She called for Devon, who appeared behind her, his arms sliding possessively around her waist. That's when I stepped into view. The look on Patricia's face was one I'll never forget. Shock gave way to fear, then calculation. Devon just looked confused. Joseph, she whispered. You're supposed to be on the rig. Surprise, I said quietly, nodding to the deputies to proceed. They handed over the stack of documents, an emergency restraining order, a freeze on all assets, a criminal complaint for forgery, nullification of the home listing, and notice of divorce proceedings citing fraud and criminal conspiracy. You can't do this, Devon spoke up, puffing out his chest. She's afraid of you. We have a domestic violence claim dismissed this morning by Judge Winters. I interrupted. Hard to abuse someone from 6,000 miles away. The judge was particularly interested in the text messages discussing your Plan B involving my insurance policy. His face went slack. Patricia stepped forward, tears already forming. Joseph, this is all a misunderstanding. I was just saving our documents. I finished for her, gesturing to the moving truck, protecting our assets by emptying our house, planning our future by selling our home without telling me. She had no answer for that. You have 30 minutes to remove personal items only, the court officer stated. Clothing and toiletries, everything else stays pending court inventory. As they went inside under supervision, I turned to walk away. Where are you going? Patricia called after me. I didn't look back. Home, a new chapter. The hearing took place 3 weeks later. I sat at one table with Thomas, Patricia, and her lawyer at another. Devon was conspicuously absent. He'd disappeared 2 days after being served, taking Patricia's remaining cash and jewelry with him. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. When she reached the messages discussing Plan B, she stopped reading and looked directly at Patricia. Mrs. Harrington, are you aware of the penalties for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud or worse? It wasn't like that, Your Honor, Patricia stammered. Devon was just joking. I never would have saved it for the criminal proceedings, the judge interrupted. This court's jurisdiction is the division of assets and dissolution of marriage. She set the papers down and removed her glasses. In my 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such a clear case of premeditated financial deception. You systematically drained joint accounts while forging documents and planning to flee the state. With marital assets. Turning to me, her expression softened slightly. Mr. Harrington, while your creation of separate accounts might seem questionable, the court finds that you consistently paid household expenses and made no attempt to hide assets from the government to protect them from potential future claims. Her ruling was swift and final. All assets Patricia transferred would be returned to me. The house remained my property. Her claims for spousal support were denied, and most satisfyingly, the judge referred the forgery and conspiracy evidence to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. As we left the courtroom, Patricia tried to approach me. I just kept walking. Some victories need no words. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my cabin in the mountains outside Missoula, Montana. The property had been part of Winterlight Holdings all along 40 acres I'd bought 5 years earlier. As a retirement plan, Patricia never knew it existed. The forgery charges had been reduced in a plea deal. No jail time, but 5 years probation and restitution payments she'd likely never complete. Devon had moved on to a divorce doctor in Arizona. I'd taken an early retirement from the oil company. 27 years was enough. Between my investments, savings, and the small natural gas royalties, I had more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I'd sold the house in Odessa. Too many memories, none of them good anymore. As the sun set, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch swing I'd built that summer. For the first time in years, no one was expecting anything from me. No crew waiting for instructions. No wife pretending to miss me. Just quiet and the sound of wind in the pines. My phone rang. A new project manager at a Canadian oil company, offering a consulting position. Good money, minimal travel. I'll think about it, I told him, and I would, but not tonight. Tonight was just for me. For the peace I'd earned. For the life I was finally living on my own terms.